meditation will be led by Maha. Oh, here you are. Good morning. Good morning. I invite you to close your eyes. Get comfortable in your chair. Also look for having a straight back. Energy in your body being beautiful, healthy, aware. Listen to the birds and the breeze. Presence of always trees and plants around us. And in this hot times, we how much appreciate rain, the water. We are calling the water, calling the rain. Let's appreciate the lake. Maybe one of the higher reasons we are here. Beloved, beautiful, and find image or an idea to refocus. Maybe the rain on the mountains, maybe the lake, reflecting the sunlight, or even the beautiful stars at night. And feel that your body is very heavy, like packed with water. How you are water too. Let me sing for you a song in Spanish. It's a traditional song for water. For healing, for she comes to clean, to bless, to calm, to bring life. En tus ojos de agua infinita se bañan las estrellitas, mamá. En tus ojos de agua infinita se bañan las estrellitas, mamá. Agua de luz, agua de estrellas, Pachamama viene del cielo. Agua de luz, agua de estrellas, Pachamama viene del cielo, mamá. Limpia, limpia, limpia el corazón, agua brillante, sana, sana, sana el corazón, agua bendita, calma, calma, calma el corazón, agua del cielo, mamá. En tus ojos de agua infinita se bañan las estrellitas, mamá. En tus ojos de agua infinita se bañan las estrellitas, mamá. Agua de luz, agua de estrellas, Pachamama viene del cielo. Agua de luz, agua de estrellas, Pachamama viene del cielo, mamá. It is slowly bringing your awareness to this beautiful meeting. And gently open your eyes. Thank you, Mama. That was beautiful. Really, really beautiful. today's presentation, our presenter is Enrique Ramos, and he is going to speak to us on Senderos y Caminos de Mexico, Lakeside's new system for friendly hiking. Enrique Ramos is a local attorney at law and notary public, is a passionate hiker, and founder of Senderos y Caminos de Mexico. This not-for-profit organization promotes the conservation and recovery of ancient indigenous paths known as Caminos Reales, as a means to preserve cultural identity. Use of this trail system will educate both locals and visitors about the natural flora and fauna, and at the same time offer new job opportunities for economic development. Activities of the organization include defining and implementing standards for marking the trails and offering options for safety and accident prevention while hiking. This organization has also designated a platform via their website through which hikers can share information. Please join me in welcoming Enrique Ramos.
Yeah? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Some time ago, with an English-speaking client, she told me, I cannot quite, my ear doesn't quite get your English. So I hope that this doesn't happen to you this presentation. Okay, I'll do my best. I'm going to speak to you actually not only about hiking in Lakeside, but in a broader context. What we're really trying to do to protect and preserve the mountain range on the back of our people. Okay, so I'm going to divide the presentation in three segments. The first one, I'm going to tell you about our organization, who we are, what are our main goals, and afterwards, in the second segment, I'm going to speak about our current projects, what are we doing, what do we intend to do, and on the third segment, which will be the final segment, I'm going to try to locate hiking and this project within a broader context of nature conservation and community development, which are two key elements of our project. Okay, so I'm going to go back to these three segments, and I hope that you can understand it well. First of all, I have to tell you that I have been a keen hiker since for many years, and I wanted to share with you an anecdote like about 25 years ago when I was doing some social work in some indigenous communities in Chiapas, and I had to work in two different communities, like around 3 to 5 kilometers from each other. Probably it was 3, but in my mind it remains like 5. Okay, so the main issue is that I needed to work in both, and one day it became dark, and I needed to go from one community to the other. One was lower and the other one was higher, and I needed to go walking alone. And it was that experience probably was a very important experience that has marked me in many ways because I had to go to walk in the dark and in the rainforest when you're walking, even if it's 8 o'clock when it's dark, the sounds that you listen are very different. Even the silence, how you perceive silence is very, very different. So I had to handle with a little bit of fear, adrenaline, but also of freedom. And those motives have been always present in many of my activities that I do. And I wanted to share this anecdote with you, and that because later on I started walking alone, and sometimes when I found somebody that I like to walk, we walked, but we really didn't know how to walk in and where to walk in this sense. So finally, I found a group with whom we have been hiking for once per month. We go on a hike, mostly in Jalisco, but also all around Mexico. And the idea is that when we were hiking, we were always looking for projects. We were passing places, old trails where we found obstacles with fences, trails that used to communicate to communities. And we were always thinking, what should we do to really take these fences away? Or we passed some other areas that were eroded because of cattle or agriculture in some other times, and we said, what could we do to really, this is a marvelous place, what could we do? So finally, 2 years ago, with two friends, both of them present here, and we decided to create a not-for-profit as a means to give structure and as a means to really have endurance in what we would do. And the name of the organization in Spanish is Senderos y Caminos de México, which the English translation is not quite right, which would be Paths and Trails of Mexico. I know that in English path and trail might be a synonym. That's basically what it means. And we have been since then trying to give some structure to our work in this scenario. The structure that we have, our main goal, we have four main goals. The first one, as was stated before, is to produce standardizing for trail marking in Mexico. And number two, of course, produce the trail marks themselves so that we are able, so that people, when they walk, not only in the mountains, but also in just if people are walking just horizontal, that they would find their way, and this would make it easier for people to walk. I'm going to speak about some examples about that. Okay. But the main principle is that this is the first one. Number two, of course, is nature conservation. Number three, community development. And we wanted to create a web page and an information database so that, number one, people could find the way when hiking, and number two, to produce data that government could implement some public policies with regard to this situation. Okay? So we want to become a reference in hiking in that sense, and our organization is still new. We hired one full-time person to work on that, and our goal in the coming years is at least to have at least two full-paid jobs in this situation. We have a board of directors. We have an advisory council of, in the event is in the making, with knowledgeable people from various perspectives that could give some input to the organization. We work right now practically through two committees. One is a technical committee, usually based on deciding what type of path we're going to mark, what type of marks we're going to set, etc., etc. Or how do we mark them with GPS, etc. And the other one has to do more in the social and environmental, and I would say legal field, in order to try to make hiking an issue in public policy. So that's the structure of our organization. And this is what I wanted you to explain in this first segment. I want to go to the second segment, and I'm going to take more time in the second segment because it's precisely what we're doing in our current projects. Okay? And the main thing that I want to start with is one of our main projects is standardizing, producing standards for trail marking in Mexico. If you walk, if you have hiked around this area, you'll probably see that there are so-called not signs. If you find any signs, usually are rocks marked with color in very different ways. Rocks set one on top of the other, ribbons from different colors set by or the Boy Scouts or a different organizations in this sense, but not really clear instructions that you could make like a circuit when you're walking. And that provides uncertainty for people when they go hiking. That's one of the first uncertainties that people have when they hike. So we are trying to really create, in the first grade, we're trying to create first a manual so that we can have some data to start pushing for public policy. Because there are, in Mexican law, there is a way to have a technical norm so that we can officialize the guidelines so that all government agencies will have to follow a certain standard of way of marking. So this is what we're striving for. This is one of our main goals to really strive for this type of marks. Okay? I have to tell you that, for instance, we have been working I want to tell you one example of one of the projects, which is our pilot project. And probably a handful of you have already worked on it. And this is a trail from the small town of Trojes. And Trojes is a very small town on the other side of the mountain after Ajijic. If you want to reach Trojes by car, you have to go all the way around from the back, and then you make a detour of about an hour, maybe mostly. And you go with the car to two beautiful mountain ranges. But the main idea is that Trojes usually is a community where most people have gone to the US to work because of lack of opportunities of development in that area. So fortunately, we learned that some people had already worked with two of the ejidos. The ejidos is a social type of organization that they hold collectively the land. So they are the owners of the land on that side, and those are ejido Trojes and ejido Ajijic. Even if they are there, they're called ejido Ajijic because most of the people that live there came originally from Ajijic. Okay, so we started a pilot project with them. They had obtained funds from the federal government, sorry, from the state government, um, in order to mark a trail, and they had decided to mark 1 kilometer of trail in a very different way. So we reached capacity with them, and we made like an alliance with them, uh, whereby we convinced them that instead of marking just 1 kilometer, we could provide a whole circuit of 6.5 kilometers. And that's actually what happens. If you go and you start to hike in Trojes, you'll be able to walk all the way upward, almost on the top of Chupinaya. And I don't know if most of you have gone to Chupinaya or not. Who has gone to Chupinaya? Okay, so many of you know have been to Chupinaya. The trail ends where you are in Chupinaya. You go a little bit up, and about perhaps 200 meters from there, you'll find the ending of that trail or the starting of that trail, because you can start it there and go all the way down to Tropics. Okay, that area is very nice. I'm not going to go any further on that. But usually, what I wanted to tell you is that we started with this pilot project, which we marked one main sign at the beginning and one at the end. Usually, we're providing information, basic information like height, distance, approximate time of walking, etc., and some basic features about the ecosystem and the flora and fauna. It's a very big sign, like 1.5 meters. And then on, we have used some sign-offs almost every 2 kilometers. So that was coupled with work from the community that they went with, I think, 8 to 10 people of the community to set some rocks to kind of highlight the way in a natural way. So that was another major achievement in that way because the community was involved from the very outset of the project. Okay, we have learned a lot since then. But before I get there, I want to tell you that two main issues that we face is what type of signage should we use and which materials would be convenient for this area because it's very different. So we started looking on the first what type of signage, and we started making research. And of course, not trying to invent the wheel, but looking at what other countries have done. And we finally chose, till now at least, for the Spanish model. And I think it's a model that's also used in the European Union. You can tell me if not, but I think it's a model that is used in the European Union. Basically, we chose it for two main considerations because we really wanted a type of system that could be easily distinguishable, that it was not a sign that anybody else would set. So it had to follow certain rational order in that, so that we wouldn't get confused, especially in a country like Mexico that everybody puts the sign out where everybody wants, and that's something that we have to cope. Okay, so that's definitely one of the main aspects uh, that we looked at, and we chose to that model, which is basically based in colors. Is one of the main elements. So they have three different colors: yellow, green, and red. Usually yellow color trails, and you're going to see them shortly because we're working hard here. You're going to see probably the yellow color trails because those trails are from 0 kilometers 10 kilometers. So that means that our local trails are also called local trails. We also have green marking from 10 to 50 kilometers, which we might also see a couple here. And then you have the long trails, which are red, marked with red, which are for more than 50 kilometers. Usually these long trails, I'm just positioning two examples that I wanted to share with you. One of them could be the pilgrimage to go and visit the Virgin of Talpa, Talpa de Allende, nearby Mascota. And that's something that, of course, is more than 50 kilometers, and that could be a possible time. It's not yet a project, it's just an example in this sense. But what I can tell you that we have been doing in a long-term marking of the trail is also a type of religious or sacred path from the Huicholes. The Huicholes are the indigenous people here living up in northern Jalisco and parts of Zacatecas and Durango even, all the way to their sacred place in Liricuta in San Luis Potosí. Most of that path, they usually did that a long journey. For them, it was a journey. It was a spiritual journey. Yet, in the last years, that trail was getting lost, or is getting lost, because Huicholes are not walking anymore. They go with big trucks, and then they just get to the specific iconic places and continue the path. So only a handful of people, usually older people, are the ones that know where the trail is. So here with my colleagues, a whole project was started, not with the vision even to still mark the trail, but with the vision to preserve memory of where the trail went. So we have been walking now for quite some years, so more than less, with a now 76-year-old Huichol from San Andres Coamiata, who has led us the way and who has provided an incredible example because he walks with us 18, 20 kilometers per journey. So we have been marking that, and I wanted just to tell you that that is one of our projects. Okay. Before I forget, up there we're also trying to set when you open the woods to preserve the trail, how far do you open? Because we had an example in a very good wheel, and they open too far. They open 2 meters in some ranges, and that also produces erosion in the land. So we're trying to set standards so that we can kind of give clarity to the community that the maximum width should be ordinary width 90 centimeters to a maximum of 1.20. And this was highlighted and thank you by a group of hikers, of teen hikers as well, that go twice per week, with whom we're working together. Okay, that's it. So I want to tell you about the materials for finalizing. The materials we first started. What should we do? Normal wood. It could be turned into a bonfire. They would just take it in that sense. So that wouldn't help. Metal, it would be object of corrosion as well, and it's expensive metal. So we kind of decided now for a type of material which in Spanish is called plastimadera, which is a type of polymer that resembles wood, which until now has been the best cost-effective element, which is sufficiently distinguishable, but is not interesting for people to take it away, not even as a souvenir. So that does help. So we are working on that. Yet I have to tell you that we're producing a hybrid model because some of the Spanish model of finalizing, they don't have like arrow type of signals. It's just like lines and circles. And sometimes I believe for somebody like me that I am not very good in orientation. So it does help to have full clarity where I'm going. So we are kind of starting to produce our own hybrid model, our own Mexican model, and we don't know where it's going to take us. But we expect that to really define that, and we're working on an error and doing error basis. So any suggestions on this, of course, would be more than welcome. Okay, we're also trying to recover some of the basic names because part of the hiking has to do with cultural preservation. So, for instance, if you have hiked to La Chupinaya, you know that there is a key point up there, which is called, most of you know it as the saddle. But guess what? In Spanish, the name, nobody knows what the saddle is. We call it El Pandito, which is just a place where it has like a slope like this. So the main idea is that that's a crucial place because it's a major crossroads to go to Tepalo, to go to Chupinaya, to go to the ceremonial center. We plan to have some important signalizing over there, but in those finals, it will be important to really kind of recover the name of these places. And also, another example is going to recover the iconic places or places of particular importance. And I wanted just to give you an example of this. We were walking in the canyon of Guadalajara. If you on the eastern part, where the river Santiago meets with the river with the Rio Verde, then you go down, you go down, you go down, and then you cross the river Santiago via bridge, and then you go up, 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 almost to a very small town called Mascuala. Many years ago, it was an important trading route of people that came with mules, etc. So before, like a 1 kilometer or 1 or 2 kilometers before you reach the town of Mascuala, you look to the right and you look to a majestic tree, just like this one, probably even older than this one. It's a centennial tree, and it's important in itself, the tree. I heard from one of the local guides that over there, probably in the 1940s, the renowned painter Gerardo Murillo, also called or known as Dr. Atl, he made a painting under the shadow of that tree. I thought that what a nice story, because if we could have people to get to know that this tree it's important in itself, but that it has this cultural importance as well, if we can link those, I think that it creates a goal in itself to go walking up there to the town of Mascuala, besides the view. So that's the other issues that we're trying to focus on. Additional information, we are open to suggestions. We have been starting to work with some local people here, expats, with many people. They already tell us, for instance, that our first pilot project, one sign every 2 kilometers is too far away. Some suggest that it should be every kilometer. So some even say that we should post a signal every 500 meters. We're working on that. So that's something that I want to tell you. And I just wanted to mention an example, because I love that, and I think it's just wonderful. 4 essential principles that I think should be in the signals. And they're in this book. I know that I'm not supposed to do any propaganda, but this is cultural information. Okay, so it's the book written by John and Susie Pins, outdoors in Western Mexico, and they post in the book, just at the beginning, 4 main principles that I think should be in the basis for all signals. I'm going to read them because I like them very much. You say, the first one, take nothing but photographs. Number 2, leave nothing but footprints. The third one is kill nothing but time. And the fourth one, please remember not to bring your boombox when you go on. So I believe that this is very important in a very simple way with drawings, that we could provide this type of education for the people that go there. We believe that little by little, it starts to become a culture in itself. Okay? And I want to go very fast to safety. That's another major concern that has been stated. If you have an injury up there, who do you call? And, it has happened, and many people call the firemen, and then the firemen call the local hiking group here, so that somebody arranges a mule for somebody to bring the people down, etc. So we have some other issues, because in some areas, not here, but in some areas, you have to take care about security as well. So that's important. That makes especially Mexican people are neurotic about it. So we need to provide some elements to say that knowing nature, you're safer there than here. Many times, indeed. The main idea is to really try to provide a safety protocol. So we're working on that as well. as part of the issue, how to do networking, and how to provide, I think, a minimal possibility of emergency contact information for people. So these are three elements that we're working on as well. So I'm going to go to our future projects that we're doing. We're currently this year, we have already projected, and probably you're going to see some signs on the next trail, which would be Tepalo Chupinaya. We're still working on the possibility if the main sign is going to be all the way down here, or if the trail is going to start at the Donuts, because that's a key place that everybody starts to walk, or from Tepalo, okay? So, but it's going to be Tepalo, then Pandito, Mirador, all the way to Chupinaya. And the idea is to try to connect both trails, the Trojes Trail, so that somebody can go all the way down over there to that area. The other important trail, which is still in definition, could be a connection from Pandito or the saddle to the ceremonial center, or starting from West Ajijic to the ceremonial center. You might not know, but there is an important ceremonial center where in the summers people celebrate, even they come with a whole ceremony that's based with the Lakota Indians of North, and they dance for 3 days without stopping and these type of things, and it's something that we are trying also to preserve as a tradition, but we still, that trail has to be worked out very carefully because it has an important spiritual content for the people that manage that center. So it's something that we are also taking into consideration. The other projects that we're dealing with are in Nevado de Colima. We're trying to mark a trail of 4 kilometers for this year. And also, outside of Jalisco, we have our first project in Baja California Sur, in Reserva de la Biosfera El Vizcaíno. It's a natural protected area where we are currently this year building the executive project for possible finalizing of some trails over there in that reserve. I have other two examples, but I don't want to step any more into it, okay? So these are the main elements of this second segment that I wanted to tell you our current projects. Now I'm going to go to the third one, going to the broader context, because hiking in itself, we do it for fun, but we also want this project to be located with these two main characteristics: nature conservation and community development. Okay, so I'm going to speak first about community development, and we believe that it's key to every project that we do to have a good relationship with the owners of the land. Most of the rural areas are owned either by indigenous peoples or by ejidos, which is this social collective type of ownership of the property. We have also some private owners, but most of the areas are in this type of collectivity. So we have to work with them, and this is probably marking the trails is very, very easy. Working with the community is harder because as always happens. So the main idea is that we have to invest a lot of time and energy into it. We're trying to develop a methodology for that and to really become very practical, not to become too wide with the community, but to become very practical. So one of our main projects in community, and it's very practical. We're trying to generate a training of guides. If we produce training of guides, we believe that they're going to be the first actors in defending their own territory with a new vision. So the main idea is that first we're training ourselves, and we are in the process of training ourselves to develop in the near future, probably workshops, etc. Who knows? Perhaps in the future we can, if we get the standards, and we can become even an agency, not for profit, but an agency for certifying guides. And the idea is that part of the element is that we're trying to define some range of tariffs for the guides, because this is important for them to really know that they're going to benefit economically from that. The first approach, when you get to some community, you say, what am I going to gain? Where is the money? But the government should put the money, etc. And so it requires time to really get into the broader picture to say that the real economic value is understanding a much thorough view of their own situation. And even then, it's hard because the pressure sometimes is hard in that sense. But we are trying to really convince to them that we can go for that. So another specific project that we have is that we're trying to build a manual for to be used in Mexico as guidelines for guide training. So we're working that on an ongoing basis. Economic benefits for the communities. If we do not produce some economic benefits for the communities, they are not going to buy the project at all. So it's very important that we really connect this part so that we are able to really get into them. So several main issues. I want to put you just an example. I read somewhere that in the US in 2015, around 37 million of the people did some type of hiking activity in the US. I don't know if that's true or not, and I did not have time to really get into the statistics, but the fact is what I found important, either if it's correct or exaggerated or not, the fact is that somebody is measuring. So we really need to start measuring what's happening and how that is linked to economic development into this type of areas. And we really believe that this can make an issue. And I can set you two examples. One of them, communities in Oaxaca, who have had a long time tradition of working into this, offering ecotourism activities, like a whole park with zip lines, rappel. They offer restaurant services and a lodge so that you can sleep over there. And that has become a great tool for preservation of their areas and also for economic development for the community. So that's one example. And the other one is just very simple, perhaps not so relevant, but yet it has an importance. There was a group of students, 50 students that were going to go hike to Trojes and in a bus. So we requested from the leaders of the group not to stop if they were going to buy food, not to buy the food in a normal, ordinary OXXO or 7-Eleven. That they would go, they wouldn't stop until the store in the community. And we connected with the person, the owner of the store in the community, and she got in one day 50 hungry students over there. So probably she got an income of 2 weeks in just one day. So the idea is that little by little, I think that connecting these type of issues, we are trying to generate statistics of number of hikers and what that has for impact for the communities. Okay. We're also striving for the cultural and social benefits of it. We believe that preserving the cultural heritage is very important, and you cannot preserve it if you don't have knowledge of it. How do you value, for instance, just these mountains? They're so dry. If you come in February, they will tell an average person will tell you, what do you see on it? It's very dry. There is nothing on it. Okay, so it's very important that we kind of get there. So this is what we're trying to do in community development. I'm gonna just speak about the nature conservation side, and I will conclude. Okay, the main issues in nature conservation, of course, especially, and I'm gonna focus on this area. We have to control and prevent unorganized, disordered urbanization. This area, and I'm going to go to what happens in Mexico as a whole, but I first want to focus on this one, because in 2013, this whole area, this whole range of mountains, together with Cerro Viejo, a very large area, was decreed as a state natural protected area. That means that from certain height, which I wouldn't tell you now because I'm not the technical man, I have my two colleagues here that are the technical people of our organization, but up to a certain height, no, you cannot do any type of activity, logging, building, opening roads, etc., etc. So this is important that you know that it exists. We have to make some linkage of it. I always look back For instance, at Balear Islands in the Mediterranean, in the south of Spain, if you would look at pictures in the 40s and 50s of the previous century, you would look how marvelous it was in terms of nature. And if you look at the pictures right now, it's totally urbanized. So totally, because of course the best views are in the mountains. So the main idea is that if we don't want that to happen to our area, we need to start generating projects that on a small scale perhaps would be started to link together so that we can really preserve, if not all, because this is a difficult battle, at least that we can have much more order and preserve most of what we can. Okay, so this is the other element. And I wanted to tell you that it's very important because we're trying to set this ecosystem here. Most people do not know it. But this ecosystem here is very important because in the dry season, you look at it and you say it's very different from the wet season. And that's what makes it so rich because it has, in terms of birds, in terms of the flora that it has particular values. This type of ecosystem is still an unprotected ecosystem as such, not like the rainforest, this and that. So we need to start creating measures towards giving the value of it. And I don't know, there was a project over here, and I wanted to mention that we're forming as an organization part of the advisory council for the fulfillment of the decree of the state protected area. So that is one major achievement that we have already gotten. So we're going to be intervening in how that decree is operating. Okay, I was in this area we have found, because some people have put some hidden cameras around, and the results were published over here, and it's incredible what you can find. If you go walking, you usually won't see any paws or animal in person. The most that we have seen is just a deer, but with a hidden camera, you would be surprised. We found puma. We found another type of cat called jaguarundi, which is a very long cat with a very long tail, which is very scarce. We have found jaguarundi, of course, a lot of deer, coyotes, from many other sorts of animals. So that means that we really need to start acknowledging. I was very concerned when they published those photographs because I said the first one that might go there are the hunters, and we need to really prevent it with a proper program so that we really set the value of that. Okay? So we really are trying to make of hiking an issue of public policy. We're trying we're going to do lobbying in the agenda to produce transformation in the law and to include it, to make it an issue in the public policy in the 3 different levels of government. And I wanted to tell you that some of you, and I was speaking to somebody, and somebody told me I cannot hike anymore because going up is very fine, but going down with my hip is very difficult. But I have to tell you that when we're speaking of hiking, we're not only speaking about the mountain, we're also speaking about hiking in urban areas, because that has to do with how do you connect spaces with each other. And we are also working in a very specific type of trails, which in Spanish are called Sendero Universal, which is called the universal path, which means that even people with limited capabilities will be able to walk. And we are trying to start a project in Guadalajara, in the Colomos Park, toward this as a first pilot project for this. So the main idea is that hiking doesn't mean necessarily only the mountain. It can mean wherever you are. And a very good example of it is just the birders, or the bird group that John and Rosemary Killing have been chairing for quite some time. They are very good hikers. They go with a very specific objective of getting catching the photographs of the birds. But that's another way of hiking. So when we speak of hiking, it has many various situations where people can hike. Okay? So I want to conclude just to tell you that I believe that you can only protect what you appreciate, and you can only appreciate what you really know, what you can acknowledge that is yours in that sense. So we believe that hiking, in that sense, could really foster that raising that knowledge, and hopefully that's something that would really preserve this area and would produce some economic development for the community. I thank you all for coming, and I thank the organizers for the
Can you move over a little bit?
You can hear me on this one, right? So, for temporarily. Thank you again so much, Grace. And I'm sure there are questions in the audience. If you raise your hand, somebody will come to you with a mic and stand up and ask your question, please. Over here, please.
Here I am, over here. I don't want to assume anything, so I'm going to ask the signs that you'll have, informational ones at the entrances to these hikes. Will they only be in Spanish, or will there be some English?
Very important. Very good question. I forgot. I had it here, but I forgot it. It's very important. The main idea is that at least in this area, it's difficult enough because the signs are expensive.
Yeah.
So sometimes the budget is limited, but we are really doing our best that at least in this area, because this area is multicultural, to have the signs also in English, in that sense. And I have to tell you that the other element is that we have a website, because this where you can find information. It's currently only in Spanish. It's in the making. We're really working hard to see, are we going to put the hikes over there so that people can download them, or are we going to be linked to Wikilogs so that people can download them there and we can make a linkage? We're still working on that. But the main idea that we're going to strive is that our web page, where a lot of the information is going to be present, would be in both languages. So many thanks. Very good.
I have one more question. You may not answer it. I live in Vista Alegre off the Libramento, and directly above me is this ugly, 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 ugly road. And was that legally built? Or was that, you may not answer it, but it's my question.
I don't mind. I think it's precisely if you link it to that decree, that area is part of that decree. I think it's been done in total violation of the law, and total violation of the law. So that's very unfortunate. It's not the only case, but that's important. Precisely because there is a total lack of vision from politicians that it's only patrimonial for many of them. I'm sorry to say that. Yes.
Mr. Ramos, right. About the, you asked for suggestions on signage, and you also mentioned about problems that people get, while they're hiking. I have the experience that I was hiking with a group up to this mountain that you're talking about, and I went as far as the saddle, and then one of the people had a heart attack. And so I was the one somehow that got stuck with that, and I tried to get the guy down as quickly as I possibly could, and I lost my way. And fortunately, my car was parked right next to the entrance, and we weren't too far off. And unfortunately, also the man had a wife who was a nurse, and so I got him back to where I was living in an RV at the time. And so anyway, that all worked out okay. But I was thinking, when it comes to signage, I think that you should have signs not determined by the places, not determined by distance, but rather by how far you can see. Because none of the paths are perfectly straight. They're not highways. They zigzag, and sometimes they go in circles. And so sometimes I think the signs should be like maybe this feet apart.
Thank you for your comment, and I'm sorry that you had that experience. And but yes, indeed, and we're going to take into consideration perhaps the feet might be. We have to find some practical ways to really cope with the issue of cost as well. So for instance, I can tell you an example of a trail in Mascota that we might help mark of 30 kilometers. It's too long. So the idea is to perhaps to mark some, to use some other type of inexpensive types of marking.
My vision would be to take pieces of rock and just paint them totally and lay them on the ground.
Okay. Yes. Let me just answer just very one single issue for that, and I'll come to the question. We have this. Thank you for the suggestion. I heard it from somebody else. We might do that. We are only evaluating one possible downside. And that downside, that doesn't mean that we're not going to do it, but we're trying to avoid as much as we can painting, because unfortunately, in our Mexican reality, if we start using painting, we're giving a hint that somebody else might use painting, and they start painting each rock in the way that we want. So, but we'll take into consideration that situation, just for you to know that this is the only thing that is holding us from doing that. Okay? Yes.
First, I want to thank you for your presentation and your far-sighted effort. Secondly, I want to thank you for the Los Torres Trail, which I've come down and is one of my favorites on the mountain. It's beautifully detailed, and it's a really wonderful way to get off the mountain. My concern is, and my question is, what's going to happen after the rainy season and the rocks come down? Is this going to have to be rebuilt year after year after year? And that's all. Thank you.
So thank you for your comments, and I'm glad that you have enjoyed that trail. Indeed, some of the rocks that were set very carefully by this brigade of 8 to 10 people working on that. It has to have community involvement. Some of it has to have maintenance. So that's the other issue, and that's why community involvement is important. As long as we're able to take people over there to hike, and to sometimes that somebody there in the community can sell the plate of food for 50 pesos, which is usually what it costs us, or 60 pesos. They get like a revenue, and then they get motivated to still move forward to do that. At some point, I think that the natural, as this grows, not all the communities are going to be involved in the same way. I believe that we're going to need to start building networks of volunteers to kind of match with a third party that issue with the community. So I think that some local type of the locals need to start getting there. So it's going to be that's one hard piece, maintenance. Yes.
That's it, Lou.
No, right now.
No, Lou.
Yes.
It's time to go.
Well, many thanks. Thank you once again, everybody.
Am I back on? I have no control over the situation. It's a terrible thing. Okay, I just again want to thank you, Luis. It was a very, very informative discussion. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I again remind you of the website, you guys, for so much of the stuff we talked about, opencircleajijic.org. And if you want a DVD of today's presentation, you can get that on that site as well. And now, as usual, if you'll pick up your coffee cups and take them away, and stack the chairs, and turn your cell phones back on, and please take your conversations outside as quickly as possible so that they can get the place cleaned up and shut up. Thank you so much for attending today.